Headquartered in Stockton, California, AeroTurbine is a full-service MRO specializing in maintenance and engineering for a variety of engines, including the widely used J85 and its variants, the J69 and T56 jet engines, and most recently, the T400. No one comes close to matching ATI's 40 years of experience servicing the J85 engine. This proficiency has led to the successful redesign and optimization of many proprietary operational processes for servicing these engines. In addition to being a renowned MRO, ATI's team of engineers provide value-added value engineering capabilities for re-engineering mission-critical parts and procedures. This gives ATI a differentiated level of service to the market, adds their industry-leading intellectual property, and increases margins. AeroTurbine has dedicated teams of technicians for initial engine inspection, disassembly, component and accessory testing, repair, rebuilding and replacement, reassembly and final inspection by experienced engine technicians takes place, and final testing, then packaging for shipping. AeroTurbine has sole source contracted relationships with blue chip customers like Primes, TAC Air, and Hermeus, domestic defense customers like the United States Air Force, Navy, Army, and NASA, along with other allied foreign militaries. ATI has also been renewed as the sole source provider of MRO services for the J85 MR contract with the U.S. Air Force for the upcoming 10 years. Additionally, AeroTurbine serves as the sole source MRO provider for the J85 engine to the Mexican Air Force, positioning ATI for dependable, long-term growth. As a preferred partner to U.S. and NATO militaries, ATI has received SAR approvals across several engines, platforms, and services. These approval requests typically take 2 to 3 years to receive, both establishing ATI's credibility and positioning the company as the provider of choice across engine variants served. AeroTurbine continues to support the long-term demand for the J85 engine, including the U.S. Air Force's T-38 trainer fleet, while expanding the company's capabilities.
Please take your seats. Our program will continue any moment.
Thus ensuring that AeroTurbine continues to be the reliable partner of choice, meeting the MRO needs of the U.S. and allied militaries well into the future. For operators and armed forces around the world, AeroTurbine is the trusted MRO, providing the highest quality repairs, maintenance, and parts to keep U.S. and aligned air power at peak performance.
Please welcome back to the stage today's MC, Mr. Jeff James.
Well, welcome back, everyone. We're going to continue this last session. I'd like to welcome to the stage at this time as a premier sponsor, Mr. Simon Gordon-Smith, Business Development Manager of Digital Airfield Solutions with Moog Incorporated.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so it's a real honor to share the stage here. I really appreciate the time. It's my first time at Tinker and the Primes. First time in Oklahoma in living memory, actually, and it's been a great couple of days. So yeah, thanks for your time at the end of the event here. Recognizing that Moog isn't necessarily a household name, I've got some simple slides, that side. And that first one is for people who perhaps don't know exactly who we are, some real basic facts. Now you've heard my accent, you've heard me speak for even a minute now. You probably, the sharp-eared ones, have heard two things. I call it Moog, for a start, and yes, I have a funny accent. So with Moog, we're not cows, we don't moo. Loads of people, and actually in the UK, for whatever reason, they all call it Moog. That's something confused in their thinking there, but nonetheless. In the US, it was Bill Moog. He called himself Moog as our founder. So if you're stuck, we're not cows, we don't moo, we're not Moog. We mow the lawn, we moog the lawn, if ever you're struggling with that. On the accent side, okay, yes, you're hearing a Brit speak. Sometimes I'm accused of being Australian. That's a deep insult. Don't do that. Sometimes on rental buses from airport to hire car space. That's where that one happened. Clearly it impacted me somehow. So I remember that one. And I get the cliche phrase, I'll try and do the other accent. I love your accent. I get that a fair amount, but I had the first experience of a different version of that story 2 days ago. One of the people that came around the stand said, instead of the phrase, I love your accent, they managed to say, you have a really pretty voice, which I must admit, I have never had that before, but fine by me. Pretty voice, maybe that's a cool sign in the making. Anyway, so that's a genuine clarification because Moog, not a cow, Moog is an American business. So okay, I've got a British accent. I'll talk about digital airfields in a minute, but when you see Moog, if you don't really know who we are, relatively big American company. I think of us as a small, big company, if that helps. So we have quite a few different interests. That's where the digital airfield piece comes in later on. But we're a flight controls business, primarily. So if you've flown on one of the main wide-body aircraft on the commercial side, if you've seen any of the military aircraft flying around in a cool way or doing their job, then you're welcome. If you've landed safely or taken off safely on a commercial jet, it's probably down to some of our componentry, so you can thank me later on, that's fine. Or the engineers who actually know what they're doing. Some of the engineers actually refuse to fly. I don't know if that gives me confidence or not. So there's a few more facts on the screen, so I don't know if it's big enough for you to see. Based in just outside Buffalo, and there's a fair number of us working to the mission there. As a quick aside, I was actually born in Alabama. Again, the accent is now turning into an international man of mystery. Neither Alabama nor living in the UK prepared me for Buffalo snow. That was a new and exciting experience. There was a flight that got stuck, so I drove from Chicago to Buffalo through a winter storm, which I'm not going to do again, because that's snow, that's real. The pain is real, so fair enough to my colleagues who live there. Good, so kind of bringing that, I've pressed the button. Can I advance the slide? There it is. So bringing that closer to home, kind of a name that plane kind of a slide. So bringing that to Tinker. The B2 there, that we have content on all of these platforms and many besides. But the B2 flight controls are maintained here in Tinker. Clearly, the KC-46, there's a huge effort. I think it's been called the KC-46 campus, is being built to maintain, do heavy maintenance on that aircraft. We have content on that. And then kind of the bottom right is a kind of a catch-all. That's the wedge tail, clearly, but it's talking around growth. There's more programs, more platforms coming to Tinker that we're interested in, or we support those. We do have some people here. So Janelle Stafford is a relatively well-known name locally. She's based here. She had to run off to she's on the board for the AFA, and they chose to have some sort of board meeting today, I think, which is unfortunately planned. So she had to run off, otherwise, she's here in spirit, she's been here, so if ever there's anyone with any sort of Tinker-related questions, Janelle's definitely the person to talk to. My clicker's not doing anything, so there we go. So I actually work for the Digital Airfield Solutions team. We have a video, so I'll pause, and then I think the guys will flick over to the video. I can do it as a dance. There we go.
For over 60 years, Moog have been a strategic partner of the United States Department of Defense, harnessing our engineering and manufacturing capabilities to develop sophisticated and innovative solutions to the most difficult of challenges. This expertise has supported us in developing the Tarsier Automatic Runway Foreign Object Debris Detection System, a versatile system that is configurable in fixed, mobile, and expeditionary options. Tarsier continuously scans airfield runways for FOD, eliminating the need for additional manual inspections and ensuring a safe, clean surface. To complement the Tarsier system, we have developed a command and control software suite that collates and analyzes data from multiple sensors, including pavement, bird, and drone monitoring, to manage FOD risk in near real time. As the F-35 takes on frontline duty in the Department of Defense, the cost of FOD is projected to increase. This cost goes beyond physical damage to the F-35 engine, presenting an avoidable readiness risk. FOD can also contribute to airframe damage, leading to a loss of low observability stealth capability and potentially a total loss of the aircraft. Some estimates indicate the rate of FOD-related damage to the F-35 is similar to that of the legacy Navy and Marine Corps fighter aircraft, but at a much higher cost. Tarsier has been selected by the US military to detect and track FOD before it's ingested during takeoff or landing, preventing damage before it happens and driving down sustainment costs. The Tarsier system has been successfully deployed at Marine Corps Air Station Yuma and comprehensively tested at Bovingdon Air Base in the UK. The success of the F-35 program and many other key programs depends on cost avoidance, readiness, and combat effectiveness. Tarsier is the unique technology that will help the United States Department of Defense and other nations to achieve these goals.
Cool, perfect. I think that video is pretty rock and roll. It's brand new. It came out about a month ago. So I'm still kind of taking it all in. I could stand here and probably get a bit boring with some of the, hey, it's a radar, it's really cool, it can detect this stuff and stats and things which the engineers would love. If we progress to the next slide. Instead, I'd much rather focus on a couple of DoD initiatives, of which the product, which was really cool that you just saw, is a key part of. So focusing on the left-hand side, there's this Zero FOD program that's now a part of the F-35 Joint Program Office. It started with the US Navy, and I guess the point of bringing this to the kind of consciousness in the room is to say, hey, hopefully I leave you all with more questions. So there's no way, I don't have enough time to go through the full story of where the Navy kind of started with the Harrier, the AV-8B, and actually the F-35 has got a real growing problem. There's a lot to that story. So hopefully with more questions, you'll see that program and say, hey, okay, I'm interested because, I don't know if it's too small, but there's some USAF sites which are they're on the plan to get this system of systems, of which the radar, which we showed, is a critical part. So their ambition is to reduce FOD rates by 75%. F-35 seems to have the clearest business case for that. So kind of the bumper sticker at the bottom here, we're talking about reducing costs. Fixing an F-135 engine is pretty expensive, and we've heard over the past couple of days that, hey, supply chain's a bit of a problem. So reducing the demand on the system for fixing engines is a smart move. But then also kind of hitting that final point, the expeditionary piece, another key theme that's come from the past couple of days. We can take that Tarsier radar and the other systems that all are coming together for this FOD system of systems, we can take it to the expeditionary environment. So that's been a really interesting conversation around how that fits in with ACE. I'm desperately trying to learn more about agile combat employment to see how those two things can align. From what I understand, actually that kind of ACE concept is the living and breathing reality for the Marine Corps. So actually we've been developing that expeditionary variant of our product for the Marine Corps. So we've got a prototype. It arrives in our our workshop next week to be able to fit that into a V22 and take it anywhere. So again, hopefully leaving you with more questions and more conversations, say, okay, we can see potentially how that fits in with ACE. You're interested to say, it's got Nellis, Luke, and Hill on the plan, so if any of those are touching you guys, then hopefully more questions will come out. On the right-hand side, really quickly, there's another initiative that's closer to USAF. AMC are sponsoring this airfield autonomy initiative. So they are seeking out and trying to figure out basically robots and other autonomous devices moving around airfields, how to control those, and again, our radar and the software we have at the back end creates, it is that command and control software. So again, if you're interested in this digital field vision, that's kind of my plug to say it's real. There are projects happening now. The DoD is pushing on. We're trying to support that. So perhaps talk to your colleagues or come talk to us to learn some more and see how that can push towards ACE or other kind of mission objectives that you guys have. My final slide is just to kind of come and contact us, learn some more. That's me. And we probably don't have time for questions. I'm the warm-up act for the general, so I know when I need to get off. That's me. Thanks very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon-Smith. The Air Force Sustainment Center is a global operation headquartered here at Tinker Air Force Base. The commander oversees more than 40,000 total force airmen, $27.2 billion in facilities across 3 installations, and $26.8 billion in spare parts inventory, generating more than $16.6 billion in annual revenue from the maintenance and supply chain operations. Please help me welcome Lieutenant General Stacey Hawkins, Commander of the Air Force Sustainment Center.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you. So good morning. This is the session to look out for because after this, we're actually drawing this to a close, and especially the folks who've spent all week putting this together. I know there will be a sense of celebration and just relief. I'm Stacey Hawkins, and I am really, really happy to be here and happy to have been a part of my first Tinker in the Primes. I've been stationed at Tinker before, but they always managed to PCS me out before Tinker in the Primes happened. And if I was coming back, they managed to make sure I came back after it occurred. So they couldn't get rid of me this year. But what a glorious event it's been. What a lineup of speakers. And I've just been just riveted listening to everyone talk about the future of our Air Force, where we're going, but particularly resting on where we've come from. Before I get started, what you see before you is a representation of what the Air Force Sustainment Center is. And 11 years old, but standing on the history of our ancestors. And there are many folks in this room who've been a part of the organic industrial base for the past 80-odd years. And their work and their leadership, particularly during the Cold War, post-Cold War, actually resulted in the formation of this organization in 2012. So 11 years young, but a history that goes back decades. So thank you to all of the leaders who actually contributed to this Sustainment Center organization being what it is today. I came in on the ground floor, and I had a chance to be under the tutelage of one each Lieutenant General retired Bruce Litchfield. And what a lucky year that was to be in the Air Force Sustainment Center. Coming in on the ground floor, learning our Art of the Possible mission culture from the experts who were on the scene then. And the Sustainment Center has had 5 commanders. And I've really had an opportunity to work closely with each one of them, from General Litchfield to General Levy to General Kirkland, General Miller being my best friend in the Air Force, and then me, probably the lowest on that totem pole. Most dear to me is Lieutenant General retired Gene Kirkland. What's special about General Kirkland is that I worked directly for him as a deputy commander for maintenance at Tinker Air Force Base in the Oak City complex back in 2012. And then I worked for him again as a complex commander, and he has been near and dear to my heart. He's been the most consequential mentor as a general officer to me, mentoring me as an airman, mentoring me as a logistician, but also mentoring me on my aspiration to become a servant for first. So I just really want to give a shout out to General Kirkland of those 5 individuals. We have our leadership team, I think, in the house today. If not, they're out working, actually helping materialize all the things that you heard today. But I'd like to introduce our leadership team because we're in a state of transition, and I'd just like to actually have you see who our new leadership team is composed of. And I'd like to start with our acting executive director. Some of you know her well, but Ms. Wendy Walden, would you please stand, ma'am? Ms. Walden has agreed to, as we celebrated the departure of Mr. Danny D'Angelo, who's going to better pastures, in his words, at the Life Cycle Management Center. So Lieutenant General Maury stole Danny from us. Ms. Walden has agreed to stand in the gap as we find our next executive director. In her first week, what a week to come to the Air Force Sustainment Center. Your first week as our new command chief. And those of you who've been in the military, the commander and command chief team is essential to actually being able that we represent the full spectrum of our force. And Ms. Walden, Command Chief, Chief Master Sergeant Beth Ferrer. Please give her a round of applause. Chief Ferrer comes to us with a rich Air Force history and a career of her own, directly from Joint Base Langley Eustis, the 633rd Air Base Wing. So if you get a joint base and how that operates, the Sustainment Center business should be a piece of cake. So welcome, Chief Ferrer. I think we have members of the senior executive service here today. I know we've seen them out and about. Mr. Jeff Sick, did you make it? I know you're out and about working. Jeff Sick runs our logistics directorate. If he's not here, please keep him in mind because many of the things that you heard, our logistics director is front and center of all of that. Mr. Eddie Lewis. Every organization this size has to have a CFO, and Eddie Lewis serves in that capacity as our Director of Financial Management, essentially our comptroller of sorts. And I mentioned during my short remarks earlier this week that the hardest job that we've ever given anyone in the Air Force Sustainment Center in the history that I'm aware of, we've given Wayne Air 2 hats to wear. Director of our engineering directorate, but also he's our director of our recently stood up software directorate. So please give Wayne another round of applause. Let's see, any other members, Ms. Walden, that I missed of the senior executive service? Mr. Gray, of course, Mr. Gray. So I was saving him for last deliberately, and I was caught up. We've heard from Steve Gray, his leadership of this event, but also, as you've heard all of our guest speakers refer to, the key to success of delivering readiness to our warfighters for the years to come will flow directly through our supply chain and our ability to keep a resilient supply chain. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Mr. Steve Gray, I've worked with him closely over the past 3 jobs, and I just really respect all that he stands for, his ability to inspire an organization. So, Mr. Gray, would you stand up once again to be recognized? So there are 2 best athletes in our midst that I want to recognize, and they have just been wherever work needed to be done to pull this off. These 2 civilian airmen, and one is actually a civilian, but after her close association with this, I call her a civilian airman as well. Miss Allison Smith, who works for Mr. Gray in the 448th. Let's give Allison a round of applause. She's somewhere making this all come together. There's Allison right there. I didn't know you were in the room, so Allison Smith is in the room. And of course, Miss Shana Bennett, who's the president of the Midwest City Chamber. So Shana, would you please stand up? Yeah, this partnership is truly special that we have with the Midwest City Chamber. And again, I've been around the Air Force a while. I will tell you, I have a chance to work with other communities. Other communities actually say we want to have a Tinker in the Primes. And they strive to do it. They realize how difficult it is. And I've been a part of communities that can do it once, but to sustain it over the years that it's existed here in this community is really, really powerful. So congratulations to the entire ecosystem that is Oklahoma as far as pulling this off year in and year out, strengthen the bonds between industry and government. And I look forward to kind of offering my perspective as to how critical that is to our nation's national security. So, the symbology of the Air Force Sustainment Center: 8 wing equivalent organizations, 3 air base wings, 3 air logistics complexes, and 2 supply chain wings. And I'll talk more about how all of these organizations integrate together to deliver a powerful punch. And I'm optimistic. We've heard a lot of concern about what the People's Republic of China is doing, but I believe in our purpose. I believe in our freedoms and values. I believe in our free enterprise, our free market system. And I think in the end, when we decide that we're going to do this in earnest, and I think we're there, we will prevail. Next slide, please. So this is the new tagline. I have been frustrated that when I tell people that I'm the commander of the Air Force Sustainment Center, unless you know what the Sustainment Center does, and the gentleman who introduced tried to explain that, it's hard to figure out how you connect sustainment to the vast amount of activities and the vast amount of stuff that happens in this wonderful organization. So rolling out for the first time, with the help of our PA team led by Ms. Kathy Kessler, we will refer to ourselves as the Air Force Sustainment Center, forging readiness and accelerating innovation. So for the first time, just clap because it's the first time. And this connects really our historic past and what our day-to-day business is. You know, our day-to-day business is the now, and forging readiness for our nation's warfighters who are delivering that readiness as far as warfighting capability to the men and women who are at the tactical edge. These are warfighters that are in our deserts, in our seas, all over the world. Forging that readiness every day has always been our day-to-day business. But I want to be known as an organization that is equally steeped and equally as aspirational and at it every day when it comes to being an innovative organization. We're already there. We just need to take credit for the innovation that we're already engaged in and then deliberately work with industry to make sure that we're building the high-performing partnerships that will help us continue to be innovative in the future. So you will hear me refer to, whenever I say AFSC, I will say forging readiness and accelerating innovation. Next slide, please. So I do love this quote, and the quote is that history may not repeat itself, but it certainly does rhyme sometimes. And it's important to reflect on what our organic industrial base in the United States of America for the past 80-plus years has done. Walk with me back in history, and you've heard references to the interwar years all week long. And I truly believe it feels like I wasn't alive in the 1930s, but I've heard about them, I've read about them, and this really seems eerily similar to what was happening in the 1930s as we were watching powers express aggressionist tendencies, and we had to figure out what we were going to do in the inevitability that the United States of America needed to be involved. In January of 1940, Hill Air Force Base broke ground. And in about a year, that complex was built, and it became an organic depot. And it was in advance of the 7 December 1941, but Hill was the first censor of the leaders of the day realizing that we needed to build out our organic industrial base to be modern and be ready to scale. In July of 1941, Robins Air Force Base broke ground. Actually, it was September 1941, Robins broke ground. And the interesting fact about that is that it was a 30-month plan to build out the Robins Air Force Base industrial plant. And because of the times of the day and the urgency, that 30-month plan was shortened to 12 months. I deal a lot with MILCON proposals and MILCON planning. And the idea that we could actually aspire for a 30-month MILCON project to be completed is really, really powerful these days. But to actually see that it was compressed to 12 months, pivoted on a dime, is really, really powerful. And I said September for Robins, and then for Tinker Air Force Base, July of 1941. All three of these complexes scaled up to really produce tremendous results. At the height of Ogden's existence, they were producing one B-24 every day. Think about that, one B-24 every day. When you talk about whip and flow days and throughput, imagine that operation and how effective it was. When you look at Robins in its heyday was producing everything from patrol aircraft to bomber aircraft, getting the job done. Compressed timeline, just a model of efficiency and effectiveness. And Tinker, we've heard a lot about the cargo aircraft and the cargo aircraft that were produced here, everything from a B-17 to a B-29. Tinker actually reached its peak during the war and continued to actually plateau at a very high level and was key to the nation's success as far as executing the Berlin airlift. In a short decade, you had 3 organic complexes, amongst others that were built across the nation, but this is the beginning, the foundation of the nation's organic industrial complex in response to a burgeoning threat in the Pacific and a burgeoning threat in Europe. It sounds eerily similar. Our chief of staff is famous for saying, we've done this before and we will do it again. Different contexts, different technology, different people, but we've proven ourselves that America can rise to the task. And I'm convinced that this history informs what will happen today and into the future. Next slide, please. By the numbers, just so you know, FSC is a large organization. We're a numbered Air Force equivalent organization, and that means that we're on the same echelon as 7th Air Force, 15th Air Force, other operational numbered Air Forces. But we are probably the most different. Out of that 42,000 people, I would say 85 to 87% are civilian. 30 geographic locations. We have a saying that the sun never sets on the Air Force Sustainment Center with geographically separated units at Kadena Air Base in Okinawa, all the way to presence in Europe. I just had a chance to go to the UK just a couple of weeks ago, and we see an opportunity to even increase that presence in Europe over the next few years, particularly around building out and leveraging our partnership capacity for depot capability with our partners on the F-35. People ask, what's the most important capability of the Air Force Sustainment Center? And everybody expects me to say reflexively, oh, it's the depots. That's what everybody knows. That's where all of the pictures are taken of aircraft broken down, skins off in a depot. But without this capability that I'm going to actually proclaim in a few seconds, none of the depot and none of the supply chain capability would be able to manifest. And those 3 foundational anchors of the Air Force Sustainment Center are our power projection platforms. And those are the bases at Tinker, Robins, and Hill. I think we have Colonel Rosetta here, who's our Air Base Wing Commander, the mayor of Tinker Air Force Base. Those platforms and the growth and the sustainment of those platforms essential to be able to provide a place for all of these other activities to actually happen. Air base wings are very complex things. I've been an Air Base Wing Commander before. Mine was at a place at the foothills of the Rocky Mountains where about 4,000 cadets gave me fits on any given day. But nothing nearly as complex. My Air Base Wing at the Air Force Academy, not nearly as complex as the Air Base Wing operations at Tinker, Hill, and Robins. So those power projection platforms are something that I spend a lot of time thinking about. We recently installed our deputy commander. I didn't introduce him earlier, but Colonel Hall Sebron is the first Air Force Sustainment Center Air Base Wing commander to serve as the Air Force Sustainment Center deputy commander. So Hall's going to hold me accountable to making sure that I don't get too preoccupied with depots or supply chain, and I focus on our precious Air Base Wings. Hall, will you please stand, please? Thank you. Consequential tour to be an Air Base Wing Commander, so he's graduated, and now he works about 25 feet from me. I'm not sure which is worse. Again, 2 supply chain wings, and we'll talk more about those later. I'm really concerned that our 2 supply chain wings operate as a integrated entity because end-to-end, from the repair and buy side of what Mr. Steve Ray leads, all the way to what Colonel Ryan Bakazan leads on the operational wing side. He actually puts the parts in the hands of the mechanics and the people doing the work. Mr. Gray actually does the complicated activities of repairing and buying and making sure that we're stocked and we we have the availability and the vendor base to actually provide those parts. So bringing those two organizations together so we have an end-to-end transparent supply chain that comes with other things like resiliency, integrity, and all kinds of needs and requirements we have, that will be something that we'll focus on in the future. 16 aircraft weapon systems, and that's just weapon systems. We also supply and we maintain parts of weapon systems. So that 16 is probably a low number when you consider all of the different weapon systems that we touch. One intercontinental ballistic missile system. That sounds small, but that's the last resort weapon system. It is the foundation, it's the underpinning of our nation's our national power. And when you look at what the nuclear deterrent has done to sustain American power and example across the world, and when you have aspirant nations striving to become nuclear powers, this one is something that we can't let wane, and we need seamless transition from the Minuteman III weapon system to the Sentinel weapon system, which will be a challenge, probably the most challenging weapon system transition that I have seen over the course of my career. A lot of folks have talked about engines and propulsion, and what is an aircraft without an engine? It's probably a model. It's probably a static display. And John Sneeden gave a very eloquent presentation about the importance of production, the complexity of production. And I tell you, when you look at Mr. Gray's operation and the propulsion units, organizations that he has as his lower echelon formations, Ms. Walden worked in this area tremendously as well. That is a part of our business as we see lots of innovation, lots of new technologies, lots of opportunities to bring things like advanced manufacturing into this business. That will really be critical to being able to sustain those weapon systems in the future. Talked about innovation, and that's one thing as far as the rebranding of the Air Force Sustainment Center, focusing on the fact that we're not just a readiness organization, we're not just a sustainment organization, but we're an organization that's looking to be on the lead tactical edge of innovation. The numbers that you see at the bottom, if you're an MBA type, you can probably say, okay, what is a military dude talking about P&L type stuff? We're as close to a profit and loss organization that you'll see in the Air Force. We do generate revenue. We do have a budget. I'm held accountable to control costs. If you look at that current ratio, that looks really, okay, are they really 20.2? That's an enormous current ratio. And it's a simple calculation as far as assets divided by liabilities. I put that there because that represents not so much that we're generating profit off of that, off of the assets that we have, but it represents our capacity. Fortunate for me, I am not held accountable to reporting quarterly earnings. And I'm very, very pleased about that when I actually watch you and what you have to go through. My shareholders are the American taxpayer. I'm given the privilege of being able, in the name of readiness, incur sometimes cost losses, as long as I can present a plan as to how I'm going to make them up. But from a business standpoint, if I were running this like a business, I would be concerned that I'm not leveraging the full capacity of the assets that we have in the Air Force Sustainment Center. So I say that to remind ourselves on the organic industrial side of the house that we have capacity to do more. And when I talk about our leadership model, in order to be able to leverage that capacity, we have to have really three main things. We have to have people, we have to have the right processes in place, and we have to advocate for the resources. And those resources come from the American taxpayer through our congressional leaders. And that's a part of my job that I spend a lot of time working on. Next slide, please. So new initiatives. Really excited to walk through these fairly briskly. I'm watching the clock. It does move faster than it feels like. So I got 24 more minutes, and we'll try to get through just giving you a wave top of some new initiatives that we're embarking upon. Next slide, please. We talked about software. This is probably the biggest reorganization in the Air Force Sustainment Center since 2012. We've done some different things. We've moved some people around. but the muscle movement to take 3 software engineering groups at each one of our complexes and consolidate that into one directorate, working directly for Mr. Ayer with Mr. Mike Jennings, who's our senior technical leader, working as a team, bringing all of this together, and the scores of people who did the organizational redesign to make this not your standard Air Force organizational chart, but having divisions in this organization that focus on talent management, focus on strategic agility. This is a new, modern organization that is really modeled after what we see big tech doing with respect to how they design their software organizations. We've been in this business for about 40 years. Since the early 1980s, we've been in the software business. We called these organizations before software maintenance groups, because that's kind of what we were doing. We were sustaining the software that we already had bought and already had acquired, and our job was to sustain it, maybe update it every now and then, but it was, I guess, a sort of software maintenance. Well, we found probably maybe 10 or 15 years ago, maybe earlier, that the amazing capability of the human beings in this organization brought the capability for us to also develop software. And we have been able to develop a 5,000-person organization over these 3 groups, and they are developing software, sustaining operational flight programs, working on test program sets, really sustaining the heart of our weapon systems. Our newer weapon systems today are essentially coatings that contain millions of lines of code of software. That's a different model. And so the mission capabilities of this organization, separately and disaggregated, but now aggregated into one directorate, will allow us to be able to release that power and to actually put that out as far as being a place. We'll have the throw weight to actually partner more effectively with industry, and we will be prepared for our next generation systems that are going to be coming our way. You'll see that everything in our inventory is touched by the software directorate. Every single weapon system, and we've left some off. Sister service weapon systems. We do work for other government agencies as well. This is probably the organization to watch when you look at the growth of the Air Force Sustainment Center. We're experiencing about 4 to 8% growth year over year as far as the revenue that our software enterprise is generating, and I'm really, really excited about what's to come. So thanks a lot for participating in the launch today, and congratulations to all of the software professionals for getting after this and reaching this milestone that we announced this week. Next slide, please. Aerospace growth in Oklahoma. I'm really, really excited about the relationships that we're building across the ecosystems with colleges, trade schools, tech schools, vocational schools. We're actually getting into the game that colleges get into when they're recruiting. If you're an SEC football fan, or if you're whatever I guess Oklahoma's doing in the SEC, so I can say SEC in this crowd now. So if you're a football fan, you see that colleges, if you're playing at an elite level, are starting to recruit kids as early as junior high school. That's what we're going to have to do, particularly as you're looking at what our software workforce needs to be in the future. We have depended on the product and the output of universities producing software engineers for many years. We have a requirement to hire every single software engineer that graduates in the state of Oklahoma. Unfortunately, I don't have the checkbook to pay them what they're worth. So the model that I have in my head, I'm from rural Louisiana. I probably should have stated that first. I am an LSU fan, so if Oklahoma plays LSU, I'm going to we'll divide ourselves and we'll root. But when I was a kid growing up, and my mama and daddy said, son, it's time to go to the doctor. I grew up in a small town of about 10,000 people. We would get in the car, we would drive to the next town over, about 20 minutes away. And I would walk into this office. That was the doctor's office. I was a kid. I waited in the waiting room for about 15 minutes. I would be called back, and I would see someone who called himself the doctor. I was a kid, not too much going on, maybe a cut or a scrape, maybe check my teeth, stethoscope, check my heartbeat, and I'm on my way. But I would have seen the doctor. I'm 54 years old. I got a lot going on. Don't take a blood test up here. You know, if I get dizzy and fall down, y'all just come and prop me back up. So I go to the doctor a lot more. When I go to the doctor and I go in Colonel Rosetta's med group, I park in my parking spot, I walk up, I see a receptionist, and I will spend probably 45 minutes to an hour in the medical complex that Colonel Rosetta commands. And I can come out, I'll have my prescriptions, I will have a diagnosis, I will have everything that I need, and I maybe spoke to the doctor on the way in and on the way out for a few seconds. But everyone who I needed to see was not a medical doctor. No one was, and I got everything I needed. What I'm saying is that between the 1970s when I was a kid to now, the medical industry disaggregated itself. And it's disaggregated itself because there weren't enough doctors. And so we saw the coming of nurse practitioners, nurses, physician's assistants, all kinds of allied health specialists that actually serve the same purpose. Doctors are still useful, so if you're a doctor, I still love you. But we found that other professionals could do this work and meet the need. I'm telling you that story is because we need to go there with software coders. And I think the community that builds the ecosystem that can produce the masses of software coders that can come and do the work to meet the requirements of our future that we need to support our weapon systems, that will be a community that will contribute most to the growth of our software directorate. And I think that ecosystem exists here in Oklahoma. And I challenge all of you to work with us. And if you're private industry, let's build partnerships where we can build on-ramps and off-ramps for folks to go between our organizations. I don't offer the most money. Ms. Walden did a survey of some interns recently, and it was interesting. I have 2 Gen Z sons, and they're both adulting. We almost got them out of the house. We got job. We think a health care plan. The last step is, can we get them off the cell phone plan? And that's still something we're working on. But when I talk to my sons and I say, hey, what are you looking for? And Ms. Walden, her data bore this out. The 5th thing that they said they wanted to consider in choosing a job, the number 5 thing was money. The number 1 thing, Ms. Walden, purpose. So our game is, because we don't have the deep pockets that private industry has, our game is that we're going to provide that, and we're going to put that purpose in front of anyone who wants to join our team. We understand that life will drive them at times to say, okay, I need to go and I need to pursue those higher paying jobs. I need to go and make sure I get that premium. Then life happens and they want a more stable schedule. So I think to the extent that we can be porous amongst each other and have mutual opportunities and mutual lines of effort to train this workforce. And I'm focusing on software because I think that's where the biggest need is going to arise. I think there's an opportunity for us to be transparent with each other, not compete with each other, but use the various benefits and cultures that we have to build this ecosystem that we need across the nation, but particularly in the area of aerospace defense. Next slide, please. Personnel. One thing that we struggle to do in the United States Air Force and the Department of Defense, the federal government for that matter, we lose the fight for best talent because we just take too doggone long to onboard people. And we have proven to ourselves recently under the leadership of Ms. Dana Crow and her team. We used to take upwards, maybe a good day may have been we'd take 80 days to onboard somebody. And we have proven ourselves that we can do it in a much shorter period of time. Our 25-day hiring process initiative, which probably to many folks in the private sector still sounds like a lot, but to us it's a huge victory. We have evidence in the month of July, we have data that says that we've actually onboarded 10 people with this 25-day hiring timeline goal in place. One as fast as 18 days. The average is about 24.3. So this is something that's big to us because I mentioned before the 3 levers that we have in our organization to actually generate the readiness and to actually deal with that capacity that we have is bringing in the right people, resourcing ourselves, advocating for the resources, and instituting our processes. So for those folks out there, if you know someone who wants to start their career working at Tinker Air Force Base in a variety of our jobs, we are working on getting expanded authorities beyond DHA to do this. But we're serious about being able to offer someone a job, bring them on, and have them in place in at least 25 days. And I think that's good faith as far as what we're trying to do to recruit the talent that's out there. Next slide, please. I'm going to go and I'm going to read off some stats to you. Small business is something that I'm passionate about. I actually had a chance to work in the Small Business Administration for a year. That sounds weird, but I had an opportunity to be in a fellowship, and my placement during this fellowship was I was director of a financial services center at the Small Business Administration for a year and learned a lot about small businesses. The financial services center that I worked in, we actually honored the guarantee loan. And that was essential to the Small Business 7A program, because if you didn't honor the guarantee loan, you would lose banks. And if you lost banks, you would lose the ability for small business to go and take out loans to be able to start businesses to explore the art of the possible. We are doing well. I just want to recite some of our FY22 numbers. We're about 4,500 actions to small businesses, 947 million of small business spend, 511 to small disadvantaged businesses, 235 million to 8A small businesses, 123 to veteran-owned small businesses, 81 million in service-disabled veteran-owned businesses, 193 million in women-owned businesses, and 121.5 million for hub-zone businesses. I have a concerted effort, and I've asked Mr. Ronnie Hobbs, and I had a chance to go around our exhibit area today and talk to several of our women-owned businesses. This is an area that we're focusing on trying to do better, and I think there is an opportunity there. There are so many folks who are starting businesses that are women-led, and we think that there's innovation to be leveraged in that category. So look for us to reach out, and if you are a women-owned business, please reach out to us, because we're interested in shoring up what we're already doing, but increasing our efforts there to be able to be more equitable. Next slide, please. So supply chain integrity, this is when I get into Mr. Gray's area. He did a much better job talking about his challenges. When it comes to the thing that I stay awake most at night worried about is the effectiveness and the capacity of our supply chain. I talked about the power projection platforms being the foundational piece of the Air Force Sustainment Center and what it allows us to do. I talked about really the business end, and now those are our depots with their aircraft maintenance groups, their commodities and exchangeables maintenance groups. But the heartbeat of the Air Force Sustainment Center is the supply chain, and it's the 448th and the 635th working in tandem. That's also the part of our business that's the most vulnerable. When we are looking at what happened, even before the pandemic, but definitely the exposure that the pandemic caused, and I don't think we're completely out of it yet. I think we're still experiencing the remnants of going through a global pandemic as you see what damage that did, businesses that did fold, and how do we restore those businesses. But I think it left us vulnerable to our enemies. My daily reading is definitely not as extensive as it used to be, but I do subscribe to The Economist, and you would think that's pretty impressive. But The Economist, if you subscribe to the magazine, this is not an endorsement, this is just what I do. You also get something called the Espresso app. And the Espresso app, if you've ever read The Economist, is pretty dense. The Espresso app actually caters to the guy with the Louisiana public school education. And this morning in the app, we saw that the president issued an executive order restricting American businesses to invest in Chinese businesses. That's in direct response to the vulnerability of our nation's supply chains, and particularly in the aerospace defense sector or defense writ large. We have to get after this, and Mr. Gray has some focused efforts, has some focused flights and organizations within the 448 Supply Chain Management Wing that are getting after that every day. There's some things that he's doing that are really, really cool. He's using artificial intelligence and machine learning. We actually entered into a first ever partnership with academia. We have a joint project with the University of Oklahoma called the Supply Chain Consortium. And over the next 2 years, we're going to develop tools for economic analytics and visual analytics capabilities to decipher data, identify trends, patterns, and cycles within risk categories. If we don't get this right, it's going to come back and bite us, and it'll bite us at the worst time. We need to strengthen our supply chain, we need to protect it, and we need to build resiliency throughout it. We need industry's help to do so. We're not used to investing or building out requirements in this area. I think we're right now just saying, hey, we need it, but I think you'll see us actually project stronger requirements to you for the products that you are delivering to us, that you are able to explain how you're ensuring supply chain integrity in the process. I talked about AI/ML, so let's go 2 slides ahead. Yeah, so this slide is to show how I link to all the other speakers before me. And what my boss finds interesting, I find fascinating. And what my boss finds interesting is the Secretary of the Air Force's operational imperatives, which you've heard a lot about today. The language has changed, and so this slide needs to be updated. But the 7 operational imperatives that Secretary Kimball talked about, we strove to align directly with those imperatives. As you see the Secretary's operational imperatives, hopefully to your left, connecting to the Chief of Staff's action orders, Action Order Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta, airmen, bureaucracy, competition, and design implementation. General Richardson's lines of effort is part of our Air Force Material Command Strategic Plan. General Richardson mentioned earlier, the line of effort 1 is deliver integrated capability. Line of effort 2, strengthening our teams. Line of effort 3, revolutionizing our process. And line of effort 4, amplifying our warfighting culture. The symbology that you see to the right is something that we came with within the Air Force Sustainment Center. I do want to give credit in his absence to Mr. Denny D'Angelo, and I've mentioned this before. On day 2, I replaced General Miller as Sustainment Center commander, and so after the change of command ceremony, which is a pretty exhausting process, I come to the office and Denny says, okay, well, Hawkins, what are your priorities? I said, well, whatever Miller's priorities were. And I was like, let's just keep going where he went. And so he said, no, let's build some new priorities. And the priorities that we came up with link directly to the AFMC lines of effort and connect also to the 7 operational imperatives. The symbology is important because it's in the shape of what I will call an arrow, which is definitely symbology that Oklahomans should be familiar with. And at the top of this arrow, at the top of this symbology, produce the promise is deliberately there at the point. Going back to my comment about the interwar years, I think that if we don't have our North Star be on producing readiness for our warfighters, we're missing the mark. It doesn't mean that people aren't first, and I got a lot of pushback when we rolled this out saying, okay, it's mission before people. I'm just saying that the mission is our North Star, and you will see that the symbology where people supports that mission is upside down. That triangle inside the arrow is upside down. And that's to represent that we view supporting our people as a servant leader endeavor. It's an upside down triangle. And I see myself being at the bottom of it, along with Ms. Walden, Chief Ferrer, Colonel Sebring, and the rest of our senior leadership team, doing all that we can to support our people so they can make it happen in order to deliver on the mission. Process is the way we do it. And we'll move to the next slide soon and talk about our mission culture. And then we'll also talk before I close today about preparing for the future. But that's our strategy and priority alignment. Next slide, please. So this is where we talk about art of the possible. And if you haven't heard about it, it's our thing. It's our mission culture. And my claim to fame as a captain, when you're a captain in the United States Air Force, you focus on building depth in your chosen Air Force specialty code. But you also have to show that you have breadth. And you have to show that you're willing to step outside of your comfort zone and do different things. And my claim to fame as far as my extracurricular activity as a captain about 25, 26 years ago is that I was a total quality management instructor. And for those of you who are in the Air Force then, you don't think that's very impressive. And it really was not, because we weren't serious about it. And even the folks from the Toyota production system and W. Edwards Deming, they told us, you know, if you're going to be serious about total quality management, you guys got to stay at this for 10 years. And we kind of flailed after about 7 or 8. You know, I got my OPR bullets, got credit for it, won a few awards because I was a pretty good instructor. But we just didn't double down on it. We've doubled down on our Art of the Possible mission culture. The Sustainment Center has been around for 11 years. This mission culture has been around for about 13 or 14. We have inculcated it up and down our organization. Every person who comes in new has to actually show that they are steeped in this, they are educated in it, and they have to demonstrate an ability to practice it. It's at the center of everything we do. It connects our leadership model that I've referred to many times during this talk to our priorities. And we are very, very focused. So as you do business with us, understand that we're bringing our mission culture to that conversation, to that relationship. And we look forward to leveraging, and I know each organization, each prime or OEM has probably something similar, but we look forward as to how we can leverage both of our cultures to drive the results that we want. Next slide, please. So produce the promise. Next slide. Bringing up the slide that Steve Gray showed yesterday, and I'm only showing one slide when it comes to how we're going to produce the promise, and it flows through the supply chain. Just got notified yesterday. We proposed, and we have a very intricate process in the Air Force Materiel Command called our Requirements Review and Depot Determination Process. We call it R2D2. If you're too young, well, I guess Star Wars has kind of made a comeback, so people know who R2D2 is. But we call it our R2D2 process. And what's so important about that process is that it sets the pace of our organic industrial base across the Air Force. We have done something unconventional this year, and we've actually gained traction. It's moving through the process, and we think that we will actually be allowed to hold this depot capacity target, which we set as a stretch goal, which then cascades into the authorities that we have to hire the people, to ramp up our investment in equipment, to actually charge ahead to meet the workload demands of the future. In the past, we would set less ambitious depot determination targets, and it would really just put us in a death spiral. We would underachieve, we would underinvest, requirements would grow, we wouldn't be prepared to meet them, and we would fail. This is equivalent to you saying that you're investing IRAD in something. This is our version of doing that, and we've been earnest. General Richardson has accepted our proposal, but he's also said, Hawkins, you're accountable, and if you fail, you're accountable. But we're moving out, and where we're moving out the most, and what is really in what Mr. Gray's organization is now empowered to do because of the targets that we've set. So look for us to actually partner with you and work with you with a different type of posture. It's more of a lean forward posture, and we are moving away from setting achievable, but I would argue minimalist targets. Next slide, please. Proud of this. Another thing that we typically didn't really address and go into earnestly was our ability to surge. And Mobility Guardian 23 is an exercise that is done, I think, yearly. I actually was a part of it when I was the A4 for Air Mobility Command. But this year, it took on a different tone. By the leadership of one AMC commander, who many of you may know or heard of, General Minahan, challenged the entire Air Force to get behind this exercise, which is an exercise that will allow us to be able to demonstrate our capability, identify our gaps in the Indo-PACOM theater when it comes to moving and maneuvering force. We decided that we would follow suit. And typically when you would have operational exercises, you would have our organization say, hey, we'll write on paper what we can do, we'll tabletop it, but we're really not going to do it. We actually did it this year. And we surged 2 KC-135s through our depot production line. Colonel Brian Moore's organization in the Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex just rogered up to do that. Worked with our engineers, worked with the Life Cycle Management Center, the program office to do that, and we proved that we could do it, and it didn't hurt. We also did the same thing with commodities and exchangeables, and we surged that considerably, and it didn't hurt. And we also actually demonstrated we had 7 objectives for our air battle damage repair teams, which will be critical in a theater of operation where we do expect to see attrition, our ability to repair damaged aircraft and put them back in the fight. We demonstrated 6 out of 7 of those objectives that we can get those done. And our ABDR team, the Air Battle Damage Repair team, is a small but mighty group. Lots of burgeoning technology there. Everything from fusion splice to how we build the war wagon container to hold all of the equipment, how we build communications techniques and equipment and the networks to be able to communicate in an austere environment. We're really excited about what Mobility Guardian 23 taught us. And in tandem with our operational partners, We're going to demonstrate our capabilities and learn from our shortfalls as we are preparing and ramping up for a peer competition fight. Next slide, please. People make it happen. Next slide, please. Yep, so innovators, artisans, and warfighters. Again, without the people of the Air Force Sustainment Center, producing the promise doesn't happen. Our people govern and execute our processes, and our ability to attract, recruit, and retain the next generation of people to carry us forward is going to be vital to our existence. We have the most patriotic workforce that I can think of. I've actually had opportunities to work in other organizations outside of the Department of Defense. At Tinker Air Force Base, Mayor Dukes, you know this well, generations of families hanging their hat at Tinker Air Force Base, coming here to work, proud of that work. The next generation, they said they want purpose. I think we can provide that. We can provide purpose, we can provide stability for families, and our warfighters depend on that ethos and that spirit that goes all the way back to 1940, the spirit of Rosie the Riveter, the spirit of all the generations of people who've come before us, the spirit of communities that surround our installations. Really, really proud. And what the PRC doesn't realize is that they have not met the spirit of the American people when that spirit comes alive and surges toward them. Next slide, please. Really, really proud with what we're doing. I think in this ecosystem that is Oklahoma, I want to challenge you to do better. I want to challenge you to do better because to the extent that we actually have an all-of-the-above approach to partnering with universities, not just flagship universities, but small universities, medium-sized universities, technical colleges, vocational schools, we need everyone on board to harness the talent that's out there to bring it aboard, whether it's in private industry or whether it's in our organization. Really, really proud of the ground we've made this year establishing a partnership with Langston University. Langston University has a very rich history. It's actually, I think, the only historically black college or university. It's the most westward. And so really, really proud to be able to establish a partnership with Langston University that we're going to roll out this year. But I'm also, no offense to the folks from OU and OSU, I really want to get around Oklahoma to every single college that's out there. And I want to prove, and we have the people to prove it. There are folks from every institution in this state working at Tinker Air Force Base right now. I'm asking myself, what am I doing to go to those places to make sure that everyone knows that they have a welcome and an invite to work there? These are all the organizations at Tinker Hill and Robbins that we have partnerships with, and those partnerships are growing by the day, and very, very proud, not just by the number, but the breadth and the all-inclusiveness that we're using as an approach to bring everybody on board. Next slide. Process is how we do it. Next slide, please. We talked about AOP, so I actually talked about that before my process slide, so you've got enough AOP for me today. Let's dwell on prepare for future competition. Next slide, please. And I'm going to wind up soon. I'm over time. VUCA is an acronym I'm not sure if you've heard of. It's one that I have continued to present and project forward. VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, connected, and ambiguous. Learned this really in earnest about a decade and a half ago. When I was a kid growing up in Louisiana, on any given day, you wouldn't see a VUCA moment. Grew up in a house with 3 or 4 channels. It was a big deal when we got channel 14, which was NBC. And so the news was pretty steady. And every now and then you would have a VUCA moment. It's weird to turn on the news now and have a steady news day. So my expectation every day in this geopolitical environment is that VUCA's all around us. And we need to be prepared as a defense industrial base for on the day that we see something happen that drives us to rally together, to harness our resources, our talent, how do we do that so quickly that we can meet the requirement? If you've studied any Taiwan scenario, it's not going to be gradual. We talk about indications and warnings in the United States military. I don't see having months of indications and warning that the PRC is going to do something jumpy. I think the surprise, which is a surprise element of war fighting. I think that will be utilized, and to the extent that we can come together to meet that need quickly is going to be an imperative. So I would ask, if you're in private industry, how are you prepared to deal with the VUCA moment? If you told me 3 years ago that an autocrat in Russia was really going to invade Ukraine, oh, that's just bluster. Don't see that happening. Even after 2014, when Russia took Crimea, I never saw the abrasiveness and the just pure aggression that we saw a year and a half ago when it came to the invasion of Ukraine. What's that next VUCA moment? I'm thinking about that. Next slide, please. And these are the ones that we're focused on the most. All three of these, on any given week, all four of them do something that is somewhat suspect. And it's important to keep an eye on all of them. The one that's missing is we still are under the threat of violent extremist organizations. Next slide, please. Want to emphasize, we are still sustaining weapon systems that have been with us for 2 decades or more. All of the weapon systems here are still relevant and still operationally relevant in theaters that they're serving in. You see the one on the bottom right, and everybody says, oh, that one's not relevant. That one's deployed right now and conducting contingency operations in a geographic area responsibility. The B-52 is not a legacy weapon system. And when you talk about the commercial engine replacement and the radar modernization program, that is as much of a modernization program as it is a legacy platform. As we see slips to new weapon systems, we'll have to keep the legacy ones going on. You see that happening with the T-38. You see that happening with the Minuteman III. So please don't take your eye off the ball, particularly when it comes to building the vendor base that we need to support Mr. Gray's work, to support these legacy weapon systems. Our nation still needs them. Next slide, please. Yep, and we're looking forward to the new stuff. And as Mr. Steen talked about yesterday, it's new families of systems. We don't know what the airframe is going to look like in the future. Any type of air breathing or airframe powered system is going to need some advanced propulsion. And it's going to be exciting to do this work together. And I would encourage you to please start formulating in your mind what high-performing organic industry partnerships look like when it comes to sustaining these new weapon systems. I can tell you, I don't believe that, at least my experience in this, I'm not inclined to advocate for a binary solution when it comes to sustainment. So if you ask me, I'm not going to advocate to my bosses that we go with an industry-only sustainment strategy. I think that the organic industrial base is here for a reason. We're here to accommodate surge, and to the extent that we can leverage the innovation that industry brings, but the stability of the organic industrial base, that's how we create the win-win scenarios that we both need. I used to believe in shared risks, and some folks talked about that early today. And I was educated by a mentor of mine that when it comes to the government and industry, it's not so much about shared risks, it's really about shared interests. And I have just a modicum of business education, but how do we lay our shared interests flat so we can build win-win solutions and win-win contracts that help us all rise? And I think that will be the wave of the future. Next slide, please. Our innovation ecosystem, talked about that before. The Sustainment Center will be an innovation-centered and an innovation-aspirant organization. Everything from supporting General Mars's organization, the Rapid Sustainment Office. When you look at our extreme digital development, government enterprise organizations at our software groups, we have innovation centers at each one of our ALCs. REACT is here at Tinker, the Reverse Engineering and Critical Tooling Lab. RAPID is at Hill Air Force Base with the Ogden Center. That's Reverse Engineering, Advanced Manufacturing, Prototyping, Innovative Design. And then you have REARM at Robbins, which is Reverse Engineering, Avionics Redesign, and Manufacturing. We are serious about scaling. We've planted the seeds. Watch us scale over the years, and we look forward to partnering with you, and we look forward to partnering with both industry and academia. Next slide, please. And these are the advanced capabilities that we're marching toward. I'm not going to go through each one. You guys know what they are. And we are serious about leveraging these technologies to be able to deal with the workloads and the complexity of workloads in the future. I'm not ruling out that our AOCs in the future will become manufacturing organizations. And I think Colonel Moore told me he was going to say this. We are moving in an aggressive way over the next year to get certified parts that we additively manufacture. So look for us to be serious about that. We're going to work on our side of the bureaucracy to clear that. And I'm looking forward to working with General Morris's organization and our airworthiness certification officials to do that. Next slide, please. So I am over time. I've gone over a lot, but I figured I was last. So the only thing that I'm holding people back from is anything they were planning to do. I will leave on this. There are two books I will commend to you. One was written by our Chief of Staff, General Brown, and the Commandant of the Marine Corps, who recently retired, General Berger. And that article is a War on the Rocks article called Redefine Readiness to Lose. And in that article, it talks about a mindset shift. And it talks about a mindset shift from platforms, which most of us have grown up looking at how we do this business. We do it by platform, and each platform. Moving from platforms to capabilities. And General Richardson talked about integrated capabilities. We're moving to that mindset in the Air Force Sustainment Center. The other piece of this is that you've heard a lot of talk about availability. And when I talk to my MASHCOM customers, our major command customers out in the field, they want to know what's the availability of the F-16. We're moving to a mindset, and this is really at my level as I talk to my peers, General Miller, General Morris, and others. Instead of focusing so much on availability, how do we actually find a composite measurement that focuses more so on readiness? So capabilities and readiness is what we will need to measure ourselves by to be able to address the threats that come from an aggressionist Russia, a People's Republic of China that's scaling like nobody's business, and any other contingency from North Korea, Iran, or any violent extremist group. Building the capabilities, focusing on how those capabilities improve readiness, that's the key to success. The second book that I will commend to you, I'm a maintainer. And when you hear that your new Secretary of the Air Force wrote a book on acquisition, you don't excuse yourself from reading that book. And Secretary Kendall wrote the book on defense acquisition. I've read it once and I'm reading it again. It's called Getting Defense Acquisition Right. And as we were driving over here just 2 days ago, he talked about how we can actually work between government and industry to find the secret sauce, to find the right incentives, to find the right shared interests, to deal with intellectual property constraints. How do we do that? And that book lays out some solid planning as to how we draw ourselves closer together. So the article, Redefine Readiness or Lose, and the book, Getting Defense Acquisition Right, I think if you could spend time reading that, it definitely has the authority of someone who will be making some of these decisions because he's in the seat and he wrote the book on it. But I found those books very illustrative and illuminating for me as I strive to be an optimal partner for industry and academia to deal with, to work with. We are all in this together. Our nation depends on it. Our freedoms and values depend on it. And it's about American power, but along with being able to project that power to our friends and allies to support them, to our enemies to deter them, it's truly about projecting the American example, which is the example that has sustained us for all of these years as being the preeminent world power that's ever existed. Thank you again for your participation in Tinker and the Primes. Anytime you want to come see Tinker Air Force Base, call Colonel Moore. He'll set it up for you. And look forward to seeing y'all out and about and appreciate all the things that you're doing. Really, really proud of Colonel Rosetta and Colonel Moore and their leadership of Tinker Air Force Base. Colonel Rosetta has a very hard job. As she was smiling and being cheery, she was working on real-world situations happening at Tinker Air Force Base just 24 to 48 hours ago. So this team of leaders that we have across the Air Force Sustainment Center, but particularly here at Tinker Air Force Base, is the best I've seen in a long time, absent yours truly. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
All right. Impressive. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our week of Tinker and the Primes. We'd like to thank you for being here this week. Please make sure to mark your calendars for next year, Monday, August 5th through Thursday, August 8th. We bid you safe travels, and thank you very much again.
Thank you for attending the 2023 Tinker in the Primes Conference. We are excited that you are here. We're thankful for all of the exhibitors, sponsors, and dynamic speakers that we've had this week. We hope that you've all enjoyed yourself, and we look forward to seeing you next year, August 5th through August 8th, right here at the Delta Reed Center in Midwest City, Oklahoma. It's been a pleasure working for you. We'll see you next year.